You know, my sort of 2 cents, which is about worth that. I don't know that the food supply is the major driver of that. I think there's far other things that are doing it. And I think and there's a lot of people that think man has nothing to do with the climate. It's all the sun and the moon and that stuff. And I don't know. I'm not a climate scientist. I couldn't tell you. I can't. There's no way for me to tell. I'm pretty good at knowing what's going on in my own health, and that's kind of where my expertise sort of stops, I suppose. And so, but I don't think cows are boiling the ocean with their burps and things like that. I think it's nonsense. But anyway, some people disagree, and a lot of people disagree with that. And they, try. The problem is they try to dictate, what I'm allowed to eat, which is a problem for me personally. Where do you, as far as your practice is going, are you online? Do you do a lot of digital work? Is it mostly in person, or how do you see your practice evolving or how has it evolved? Have you, like you said, 10 years ago, you would have been the pyramid, the Australian pyramid. Now you've made your changes. What has driven you to make those changes, just out of curiosity?
In terms of my own philosophy, it always starts with us, doesn't it? I hit those kind of perimenopause, menopause years, and things changed for me and for my own health. I have an autoimmune thyroid condition. I've had that for potentially 30 years, but only was diagnosed probably 10, 15 years ago. So that's sort of my underlying focus is on, what can I do for me? But any information that I learn, then I obviously I use with my clients. I moved into a more ketogenic way of eating a number of years ago. I found that that's made a huge difference for, those menopausal symptoms that were starting to kind of rear their ugly head that was starting to impact me. These days, in terms of my practice, it used to be mostly in person. Now it's probably 50-50. I think a lot of us got used to Zoom during the pandemic. And so it's just easier to work with people that way. I now work with people worldwide with lipedema. That's probably my passion project at the moment, in terms of once I came to understand lipedema, as much as I love working with people with all sorts of health concerns, once I learned about this particular condition from that client I mentioned before that came to me and said, well, is this why I'm not losing weight? I started to recognize it in my own family tree. And once I recognized it in my own family tree, I realized that we have a genetic predisposition towards this condition. And so, many of the women in my family now eat in this way. I also, because that's the vast majority of my clientele, I work with them with a ketogenic diet. I always start at keto rather than sort of jumping into, I see carnivore as more like an advanced practice of keto. So with my ladies with lipedema in particular, we started at a ketogenic level and we just assess. For many people, it's a big jump, even from what they've been doing originally to a ketogenic diet. We sort of slowly work to low carb, then to ketogenic, get people starting to feel better, less pain, less brain fog, more energy. All of those things provide you with that motivation to keep going. I do find some of my clients can stay at a keto level. That works for them. It works for their lifestyle. They're experiencing enough benefits with their health condition that they're like, yep, this is good. Some of them will do that for a few months. We do usually trial that for a period of time to allow the body to adapt, to get that sort of keto machinery up and running well. And then if they're still not getting all of the benefits that they would like, then I do from time to time say, hey, well, let's test out, a more, ketovore, moving towards sort of carnivore way of eating. And let's see how your body responds to this. I always put it to people, it's an experiment. We're testing this out. We're going to give it a trial. We're going to do the trial for, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and just then gauge. I always think it's important with our health that we take time every so often to stop and assess. Does this feel like it's working? What benefits am I getting? I actually get my clients sort of on day dot to fill in a bit of a questionnaire about their symptoms. And then, 6 weeks into keto, we do the same questionnaire so that people have something quantifiable that they can say, well, yes, actually, my pain was a 10, now it's only a 7. Yep, great. You're getting some benefit from this. Let's see where this goes. Because we're so quick to forget what was going on before. And so that's really beneficial. And then if we move into a more of a carnivore way of eating, then we do the same. We do that assessment again and say, well, okay, have you experienced more benefits from this? Where are we going with it? I do have some that have moved into a carnivore way of eating that have felt great for, 3 to 6 months, and then things sort of, seem to peter off and they don't get the same benefit from it. And I say to them at that point, well, yeah, that, that can happen. Let's test this out. What's changed? Could the hormones have been impacted by something that you're doing? And let's keep playing around with it and keep that mindset of, I'm going to experiment with my body and just see where the benefit comes. And I think that that's a helpful mindset, to not go into something and say, this is it, this is what I'm going to do forever, because, we have to stay in tune with what's happening with our health. And I have had clients then sort of do a bit more of a sort of intermittent carnivore. There might be periods of time where they're more carnivore, other periods of time where they're, more at that ketovore or keto level, and they just kind of switch it around. And that seems to work for some people as well. I think about that in terms of ancestrally, we would have periods of feast and famine, and our bodies were able to kind of adapt. Maybe for some people that replicates that experience. They are more carnivore through the winter and a bit more sort of keto through the summer months, and their bodies seem to respond to that. But it's having that mindset of, I'm going to experiment and see what works for me, is really helpful, I think.
Do you think there is a phenomenon of age changing our requirements? Because it seems like a lot of people that sort of end up drifting to low carb, ketogenic diets, even carnivore diets, tend to be a little bit older, whereas the younger folks are like, no, I don't want to do that, or I don't enjoy that. And the older folks are like, this is now what works for me. Do you think there's going on with something as we age, perhaps?
Yeah, and I think some of that comes back to that protein that I mentioned before. We actually need more protein as we get older. We would think that we would need less because we're not likely to be as physically active as we were maybe when we were younger. But I think some of those digestive processes become mildly impaired. So by eating in a different way, hopefully we can override some of that impairment. Eating more protein in the diet is potentially covering some of those nutritional bases if we're not able to cleave as much of that nutrients out of the protein. But certainly I see that aging, just the phenomenon of aging, we start to accumulate more and more, I guess, health conditions and labels and symptoms. And so at that point, really reassessing and saying, well, what worked for me in my 20s when I was running around and super busy and doing all of those things then may not be working for me at 50 or at 70. So, let's have a bit of a plan and a reassess and test something else out. Like I said before, we don't have to set anything in stone. What's the harm of testing out a ketogenic diet for, 6-8 weeks and just seeing how your body responds, or even testing out carnivore or a hybrid of them and just seeing how your body responds. It's doable, and you may find some incredible benefits at the end of the experiment, right?